not quite sure how I did not know that these existed, being I have been making tomato sauce and preserving it for decades now. This is my absolute new favorite tool when it comes to making tomato sauce. So this is a Weston Tomato Press. I got it 2 weeks ago, and I'm not sure how I ever survived in the kitchen without it. This video is sponsored by Lehman's, which is where I got my tomato press. We'll have a link in the video description so you can go and check this out. But I have to say, my husband actually was helping me as we put it together and went to use it for the first time. And normally I am the one making tomato sauce. I feel like I need to preface this. He's like, I'm not sure this is any faster. And it was like famous last words. I'm like, have you made tomato sauce before? By yourself? The answer is no. Trust me, it is much faster than roasting the tomatoes and handling each one multiple times to make your sauce. Now, I do love the flavor of roasted tomato sauce, and we've got a video which we will pop up here and beneath if you don't have one of these and you've got tomatoes and you want to make your roasted tomato sauce, because it is quite delightful. But when you have a bunch of tomatoes on hand and just need to crank through them fast, this, my friends, is the way to go. So these tomatoes that I have here, I've got 4-gallon bags. These were tomatoes that we picked and harvested just during the summer months, and then we froze them. So once they thaw, these are really great because the skins will just come off of these really easy, and you can peel them easy by hand without blanching them. But you still are doing that for each tomato, and then you're coring them and you're removing the seeds, etc. So there's still quite a bit of time consumption in there, no matter which way you go. But with this, now when they're fresh, it's recommended that you want to cut in half and or quarter your tomatoes before putting them in the hopper here. But because these have been frozen and then thawed, they're really mushy and it's not going to matter. So we're going to just go ahead and fill our hopper halfway full with these tomatoes. And you can see once they've frozen thawed, like there's quite a bit of water that's coming out of these. And so obviously I'm not going to put that through because my desire is to have really nice and thick tomato sauce and not soupy, watery tomato sauce. So this is clamped nice and well to the countertop. It does have a suction one too, but with the wooden countertop, I didn't find the suction one was holding it down tight enough. I think if you had a different type of material for your counter, it may work better, but they send this great clamp. So I just have this baby clamped down solidly to the island. And then you're just going to use this to help guide and push the tomatoes through while you turn. So you can see it just separates out the skins and the seeds for you. And we are not done with these seeds and skins yet. This method allows you to get every last bit out. And then we're just gonna take a spatula because some of the pulp will get caught here on the screen as it comes out, and we're gonna just scrape that down into our bowl. Now, if you've ever had issues when you are making tomato sauce where it tends to separate, it's usually because you waited too long to get it to heat. So as soon as you have separated out your tomatoes, you actually want to get it on heat as soon as possible. So we're going to just work in some small batches here. So if you get it onto heat, whatever the correct grammatical term there would be, then you can avoid having it separate out. So it's like when you have your tomato sauce and when you're simmering it, you don't really notice it. But then after it cools, especially if you're canning and it's sitting in the jar, you'll see where the pulp has separated out from the liquid. There's nothing wrong with it. When you open it up, you can just stir it back in. It's not a big deal. It just doesn't look as pretty sitting on the shelves. So from the 4-gallon bags that we had of our tomatoes, this is our leftover peels and skins. However, you're gonna be surprised at how much more we're able to get out of these by passing it back through a second time. So we're just gonna go ahead and put all of that into our hopper and just use the little stomper. Do you like all my technical terms? I tend to rename things. And we're just gonna push and press all of these back through. You'll see on this second pass through how much thicker and really silky and smooth this sauce is when we're pressing it just from the remaining skins. So it's actually pretty cool to see how much more we ended up getting. And like I said, this is going to be really thick and flavorful part of the sauce. There's not a ton of liquid, a little bit that will need to evaporate out as we're simmering it. And then you can press them back through a third time if you want to get every last little remaining bit out. But I generally will take, in the past, I have taken the leftover peels, skins, and this has the seeds in them, obviously, because it passed them all the way through together. But you can just dehydrate these skins and or put them through the freeze dryer, and then you can just grind them up, and then you have a dried powder of the tomato skins, and then you can use that to thicken sauces and stews, soups, chilies, etc. Now, the reason that we want to separate these out is kind of twofold. Is one, there's the textural issue. So I don't know about you guys, if you have any kids who have textural issues with food or not, but my daughter does not like skins in her tomato sauce or her tomato soup. So I separate them out for her, being a nice mom. But the other reason is when it comes to safety. So as far as canning goes, the canning tested recipes and times that we have for our sauces and our tomato products is with the skins removed because they have a higher bacteria load. So we are still adding acid, which you'll see when the sauce is simmered down and we get ready to can it, because we need to keep that pH level at a 4.6 or lower. The lower the number, the more acidic it is in order for it to be safe canning wise. Now, if you are freezing your sauce or dehydrating or something like that, then you can leave the skins on if you wish. But for canning safety and textural issues, I like to take mine out. But what's interesting is when you do freeze dry or dehydrate the tomato skins, because once it's dry, you can pulse it in a blender or a food processor, and it will become a much finer powder than I'm able to get by blending tomato skins just whole in a blender before they've been dehydrated. And then there's not so much as of a textural issue. So this is a jar of tomatoes that I freeze dried. This does include the peels and also has some of the pulp because I just have the tomatoes and freeze dried them in trays. But you can see this is able to be a really fine powder. So this can work really great as well. So I like to just process the tomatoes in lots of different fashions, but this one condenses it down a lot. Definitely helps if you have limited storage space. So a few things you're going to want to consider when you're using this. As you can see, I have created quite a little mess splattering, so you're going to want to make sure that you have an apron on. This is a linen apron, and linen is really great for fabrics because it tends to be more, the dirt doesn't penetrate the linen fibers as much as it does cotton. So it tends to not get dirty as fast, and it also tends to wash better in order to get stains out. The other great things is because this was such a watery, I was using this to wipe my hands and stuff, but linen absorbs water really well, but also dries really fast. So my apron is already dry, which is great because we've got quite a bit more work to do in the kitchen today. Now, Lehman's Hardware, the tomato press comes with the regular screen that I have on here for specifically making tomato sauce. And you can also use it to make applesauce, which is great. But they also have some different accessory screens that you can grab. One is a pumpkin screen, so you cook the pumpkin, but you can do it with the skins on, and then you can put it through here and it will remove the skin and create a really nice puree for doing your pumpkins. And then there's also a salsa screen that can work when you are making salsa. It's just different fineness right on the screen parts of the little mesh there. And then they also have where you can do berries and grapes and lots of different things. So even though I'm using it and it is called a tomato press, and that's what we're using it for today, there's lots of different options that you can use this for so that it can become a workhorse in your kitchen. now that we've got all of this over here in the pot, we are just gonna bring this to a simmer, and we're gonna let it simmer. If you want a really thick tomato sauce, then you let it simmer to about half, let it reduce to about half. But you can also just reduce it to a third. So it just kind of depends on how watery your tomatoes are and how thick you want your sauce. And so that can take, this is gonna be thicker because they have already been frozen and then thawed. So we actually got quite a bit of the liquid out in the bags already and then working them through this. So this won't take as long to simmer. And we also used our paste tomatoes. They have less water to begin with. So this will probably simmer for an hour or two, and we'll just kind of keep an eye on it, and you'll be able to see the level from the pot from when we started as it goes down. So our sauce has reduced by a third. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off. And you wanna make sure that you are jarring your sauce while it's still really hot, but this is actually physically boiling right now, so we're good. So jars just came out out of hot soapy water so that we're not putting hot into cold glass. It will, trust me, it will actually crack if you do that. And so we are going to be adding our bottled lemon juice from concentrate to each of our jars to ensure proper acidity. And for the exact amounts, canning times per jar size, etc., you can go to my website. We have a full printable tutorial, both for water bath canning, steam canning, and pressure canning, because you can use all three of those for doing tomato sauce. So you can go and grab the printable version and full recipe there for exact steps. I like to, however, when I'm canning anything that requires adding the acid to jar, I go ahead and add all of my acid to all of the jars before I even begin to put in the product because I never want to miss. And sometimes when you get going ladling, it can be easy to stop and then add your acid. So I just go ahead and batch that right off the get-go. Now, salt is completely optional when it comes to canning. The salt is just for flavor, has nothing to do with the safety. And so I usually do just a 1/4 teaspoon to the pint jars, just a little bit of salt. And then depending on what I'm making from the sauce at a later date, then I can add salt and other seasonings at the time of actually opening and serving these. So our jars are prepped and ready to go there. So we are going to start ladling our sauce into our jars. Well, you can see why this is my new favorite tool for making silky smooth homemade tomato sauce. And if you would like to grab one of these linen aprons or our brand new flour sack, everything worth preserving towels, we'll have a link below. You can head over to the general store on my website and snag these for your kitchen.